الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
الحمد لله الذي نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدًا عبد الله ورسوله أرسله الله تعالى بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله وكفى بالله شهيدا فصلى الله عليه وسلم تسليما كثيرا أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وإن شر الأمور محدثاتها وإن كل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. قال الله عز وجل في كتابه الكريم بعد أن أقول أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم قال إني أريد أن أنكحك إحدى ابنتي هاتين على أن تأجرني 8 حجج فإن أتممت 10 فمن عندك وما أريد أن أشق عليك ستجدني إن شاء الله من الصالحين. قال ذلك بيني وبينك أيما الأجلين قضيت فلا عدوان علي والله على ما نقول وكيل. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. اللهم ثبتنا عند الموت بلا إله إلا الله اللهم اجعلنا من الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر آمين يا رب العالمين. This will be the final khutbah I give on the subject that I started. I titled this online as Let Them Get Married, and I was speaking to you before about what qualities men, Allah Azza wa Jal encourages them to have when they are ready for the prospect of marriage. And one of the most compelling ways that Allah has taught us that lesson is through the story of Musa alayhi salam. And to summarize the story, to get right to the point of the khutbah, what we have so far is he helped a couple of women, and he was extremely dignified and respectful in the approach that he had towards them. And he only had the good intention of helping them when they were surrounded by other men that were either not respectful to women or didn't care that they were in need. And so he carries himself in a dignified way, turns back to Allah, sits under a shade, and says, Inni lima anzalta ilayya min khairin faqir, whatever good you send my way, I am bankrupt, I could use it. So he's at this point a refugee, he's homeless, he's a fugitive from the law, and he's sitting in the middle of nowhere in Madian with nowhere to go and no belongings. And when these daughters go back home and tell their father about what he did and how some stranger helped them, the father and they both assess that the way he carried himself was enough to know that this is a good person. And this person should be helped the way he helped us. And the father trusted his daughters enough, which is a separate subject, to send one of them to go and collect him and say, I'd like to pay him. So now he's coming back, and he's back in the father's house, and now he tells his entire story to the father. And they're listening. This is not a mansion. This is an old home where basically there's barely any walls, thin walls between, where they're sitting, maybe even a curtain. So the girls can hear, these young women can hear what he's telling the father about what his life has been, where he's coming from, why he finds himself in this desperate situation. They hear all of this. And one of them realizes, you can assess in between the lines, that they live in such a society where clearly they haven't found anybody suitable for their daughter, for his daughter. Had that been the case, they would have already been married, and they wouldn't have to go all the way with their animals to a lake or a pond where all these other men are aggressive and they have to wait for all of them to finish so they can feed their animals. That's the situation they found themselves in. No father wants to put his daughters in that situation. He would rather that his daughters have the security of a good home with a good husband. Clearly that's not an option right now. And if that was, that would have been taken. These girls are also pretty smart because they go outside all the time. They're dealing with a hostile environment. They're not exactly in an Islamic society, you can tell. And they're forced to work outside because their father is too old to work. And so these daughters, their opinion matters to the father because they've seen the real world. He trusts them enough to go and take care of the livelihood for the household. So he trusts their opinion too. So one of them comes and tells him, Ya Aba tistajirhum, Dad, you need to hire him. Dad, you should hire him. Now the logical question is, if there was anybody to hire before, that would have happened already. What she's saying in between the lines is the only real way to hire him with two unmarried girls here, and if he's good enough to hire and keep around because he's safe, what she's telling him is, I'd like to marry him. I think this is a good candidate for marriage. I've seen what men are like outside. He's different, and I think I want to go for it. And I want your blessings for it, but I'll say it in code, and I'll say I'd like to marry. I'd like for you to hire him. Istajirhu. But then she also gives reasons. And this is important. She doesn't just say, oh my God, he's amazing, or just some empty words. Her reasoning is so important that Allah made it a part of the Quran for you and I to recite. So it's valuable. It's not just some quote in a story, it's timeless guidance. And so she describes two qualities of Musa that make him a good candidate for marriage. For being hired and for marriage, as if those are kind of similar. Because when you get hired for a job, you're taking a big responsibility, isn't it? And when you take on the role of marriage, you're also taking on the responsibility of the head of a household. So there are parallels between those two things. It's also the fact that whoever hired you is trusting you with something important. Just like a father or a guardian, or a family is trusting you with their treasure, their daughter. So there are parallels between being hired and also approaching a family for marriage, for men. So she says these two, the best kind of person you can hire is inna khayra man istajart al-qawi al-amin. She says the strong, which I talked to you about in the previous khutbah, but there's the second quality, al-amin, which the easiest translation, and it's a fair translation, can be the trustworthy. That he's trustworthy. Now, you and I know that trust is built over many years. And trust is something that's earned. You can't just hear, trust me. When you hear a car salesman say, trust me, then you want to run the other way. People who say, trust me a lot are the least trustworthy people, right? And so you have this, and Allah describes people that take oaths a lot or give guarantees a lot, that those are the people that you can't rely on them. Halaf, That's actually something described in the Quran. The quality of the hypocrites is اتَّخَذُوا أَيْمَانَهُمْ جُنَّةً. They take their oaths like a shield. Like they have no other credibility, so they have to use their words to come across as trustworthy. But the first question that arises is, this woman knows him for maybe a few hours, and even within that hours, her interaction with him is a few minutes. How is she coming up with the conclusion that he's trustworthy? I could see how she came to the conclusion that he's strong, because he handled those other men, he handled the animals, that's all there. But how did she arrive at the analysis that this man, Musa alayhi salam, who is not yet a prophet, by the way, he's not a messenger of Allah, that's going to happen when he has a conversation with Allah on the mountain, on Tur. So this is just a young man that she doesn't know. Wearing foreign clothes, of all things. Speaking probably a foreign tongue and having a hard time communicating, but because he's from Egypt, and he's of the Israelites, and the Madian people are Arabs. So he's a different race. He probably barely communicates with them. There's probably a language barrier of some kind between the two of them too. How is she trusting him? The first sign of trust that he demonstrated is the way that he carried himself when there was no one observing his behavior. He didn't act any differently when somebody else is watching or not watching. He could have spoken to these women any way he wanted, like those other men, but he carried himself in a dignified fashion. He did something good with no agenda. And he walked up to them and said, "Ma khatbukuma, what's wrong with you? What's the problem? Why are you wrestling with your animals? Why is the game of tug of war? What are you doing?" And they described to him, "La nasqi hatta yusdira ar-ri'a wa abuna shaykhun kabir." We're not going to give our animals drink until the entire flock of these men that give their animals drink are done, maybe in between the lines, because they're no good men, or they're disrespectful towards women, or it's a hostile environment and we're not safe going down there with our animals. We can't defend ourselves against that entire mob. So we're going to wait. We usually wait until they're all done. And our dad is a big sheikh. And big sheikh could mean a person of great, clout. It can also mean our dad's a very old man. Actually, sheikhucha means old age. So our dad's a very old man, meaning he can't do this work. We have to do it ourselves. That's when he grabbed the animals and he took them and, he showed his trustworthiness. He showed his genuine eagerness to help without any other agenda. And these women are too smart to know when men are playing a game because they've been outside. So they can tell already he's different from the others. The second is when he came back to the father and he's coming and talking to him, he should be presenting some good version of himself. Hiding some embarrassing facts about himself. But Allah describes, فَلَمَّا جَاءَهُ وَقَصَّ عَلَيْهِ الْقَصَصِ. Like, he came to the old man who wanted to just pay him, but he found an old man that it seems like a wise person, seems like someone reliable, someone who's got good nature, he wants to pay me. So clearly he's a good-natured man, and he felt, he trusted me enough to invite me into his home. He felt a little bit safe, and he had the need to open up about what he had gone through. So he told him the entire story from beginning to end, where he was born, what his life has been like, the crime that he committed by mistake, the fugitive nature of his status, where he is, how he has nothing to his name, all this stuff he opened up entirely. And he wasn't proposing to the girl, he was just telling his story. But the fact is that he was able to be so honest with this father in his conversation. Even about embarrassing details. Who likes to go and tell someone, "Hey, by the way, I killed somebody. That was an accident though. They're looking for me. But that's why I'm kind of running away. And you may have noticed that I don't have a place to stay. That's because if I head back that way, they're going to kill me." But nobody's proud of sharing those details. And the idea here isn't that you come and you open up your past mistakes to anybody you talk to. That's not the point. The point is there was a lot burdening on the chest of Musa alayhi He had no one to talk to. He had no support system. And he found someone he can confide in and he decided to seek some kind of guidance or some kind of comfort in opening up to him. But there is this level of vulnerability. When you want to be trustworthy, then you have to actually open up yourself. What happens, and this is important because in the marriage process or in the process of courting somebody that you would like to marry, often we present a version of ourselves that we think is the most impressive. And there are details about ourselves, and there are things about ourselves that we'd like to hide or not share or cover up. And it's so crazy nowadays that people don't even cover it up themselves. They have their families cover it up too. And they present some other version of you, or you present some other version of you that only after marriage is uncovered. Now I can show you what I really am. And you're like, that wasn't the brochure. This is something else. Is this the same? Because that doesn't look the same. That doesn't act the same. That doesn't sound the same. You're a completely different person before and after. This is actually what's being highlighted. To be trustworthy, to be open enough, even about things that you think are not impressive to someone else. The decision to get married, and I'm talking to the young men here, the decision to get married is, in the Quran, is one of the most beautiful gifts Allah has given men. And Allah has given the wife to you as your libas, which means as your clothing. As your clothing. Nothing is hidden between you and your clothing. Your clothes know you like nobody else does. Your clothes end up smelling like you too. Your clothes are what make you good, what make you safe, what hide your embarrassment from other people. So your clothes are actually your protection. And you become their clothes and they become your clothes. And that's not going to happen if some part of you is covered up. Or you're not really being true to what you actually are. You can't be that. So there has to be a real openness and a real clarity about what it is that you're seeking in a spouse. What it is that you want. What do you like and what do you not like? You cannot, somebody looking for you, cannot be dishonest about their preferences and say, no, everything else is so good. My parents like this girl, or my parents like this guy. Everything else is working out. So these other things that I'm uncomfortable with, I shouldn't say anything about them. And then you get married, and 3 years later, you're like, I should have said something. I knew this was a problem. And then all hell breaks loose because you weren't ameen to begin with. You weren't trustworthy and honest to begin with. You have to be open about some of these uglier conversations from the beginning, so they don't become a problem later on, because they will become a problem later on. The other powerful thing about this ayah is the combination of these two qualities, al-qawi, al-amin. And let's think about that in ours, not in the sense of the story, in a universal sense. You could be a candidate for marriage because you're financially strong, because you're physically capable, because you're socially in a good position. You come from a good family. You have citizenship, whatever. You have these things that make you a strong candidate, yes? But those things look good on paper because, sometimes families are looking for someone that comes from the same village back home, or they speak the same language, or they like their family, and they want to make sure they get along with every third cousin before they decide that this is a good match or whatever. They want to, check all the boxes. Fine, looks good on paper. They've got a nice house. He has a nice car. He's got a nice job. He's a good-looking guy. He's this, he's that, he's the other. All that stuff checks out. What we don't look for is how trustworthy is this person. So it looks good, and then you start getting pressured that you should accept this proposal because it looks good, And we are obsessed with al-qawi, and we ignore al-amin. We ignore al-amin. On the flip side, there is somebody who's very sincere and genuine. Somebody who's very open and honest. Somebody who's, reliable and trustworthy. But they can't get a job, and they're not even looking properly, and they're no good at handling certain responsible situations. They're very, he tells her he loves her and he wants to marry her, but he's scared of his mom or something, and he can't stand up for anybody. He can't stand up for her or himself, but he loves her. He's ameen, but he's not qawi, right? He's trustworthy. He's good-hearted, but he can't stand up for what's right. That's no good either, And sometimes when people get emotionally attached before they get married, then they're like, I don't care if they're not, I don't care if they're not strong enough to stand by what's right. I don't care if they're not strong enough to stand up for me. I don't care about any of that. Oh, I love him too much. I just want to get married. Or I love her too much. I just want to get married. No, these are two qualities that have to coexist. The person has to be strong in that they stand up for themselves and they stand up for you. And they can take care of themselves and they can take care of you. And on top of that, they have to be someone who's ameen. And ameen meaning someone who is trustworthy. And someone who is also, amin comes also from the term peace. It's amin and amana. Those are the two implications of the word amin. Peace and trust. And I've highlighted trustworthiness. But the other component of that is also they're at peace with themselves. They're trustworthy because they have a level of safety even with themselves. You can't marry someone because they're distraught or they need an escape. Or you need to save them somehow by marrying them. Marriage is not a rescue operation. That's not a rescue. He didn't say, I'm in so much trouble, please let me marry your daughter. That wasn't it. And she didn't say, oh my God, Dad, look how much trouble he's in. We have to do something. Please let me marry. That's not her reasoning. That's not her, because marriage is not a charity case. It's not a charity case. You have to think about what you're going to live your life as. Are you going to, because if you make this decision on the right principles, and again I'm speaking to the men here in the audience, if you make this decision based on the right principles, and you follow through the way Allah wants you to, then Allah will put blessings in your marriage. He will make your marriage strong. He'll make your wife actually respect you for who you are. One of the great studies in psychology now is how there's a tendency of women to shame men for just existing. You never do anything, you don't do this, you don't do that, there's constant, and men develop a resentment towards women. And this is a very common phenomenon in many marriages where one side is guilting and shaming and the other is feeling, and sometimes the equation is flipped also, obviously, both of them exist. But I'm speaking to men in this khutbah. I know whenever I talk about such subjects, if I was talking about parents, then children would say, you never speak about our rights. If I was talking about kids, parents will say, you never speak about our rights. If I'm talking about men, I'll get comments, what about women? When are you going to talk about women? You can't talk, if you talk about everything, then you're talking about nothing. So you have to deal with one thing at a time. And what I'm dealing with at the moment is men. And what we need to be like. And you don't want to put yourself in a position where you're worthy of being guilted for not standing up, for not doing the right thing. You want to be a person of principle. You want to be an anchor. You want to be a source of strength. Just like your parents must rely on you at some point. Just like your siblings might rely on you. Just like your employer is going to rely on you. You need to be the reliable anchor of the family, a pillar of the family. And that means you have to, from the start, be qawi and ameen. You have to be qawi and ameen. If you're not trustworthy, if you're hiding things, if you're secretive, if you're thinking about marrying somebody and you're still calculating, so what things am I going to tell her, what things am I going to hide? If that's the calculation that's still going on in you're not ready. You're not ready because you're not ready for a libas. That's a jump you have to take, and it's a massive jump. People keep asking, how do you, and this is the last thing I'll share for this khutbah, because inshallah my intention in the future is to actually speak about some of the other matters related to family life in the Quran. But I don't know if I'll use khutbahs for it or separate opportunities. But one last thing I wanted to introduce in this khutbah, at least before I let the subject go, is the idea that men have to understand that they are not interested in in just a female. They're actually taking responsibility. And they took someone from a house where she was a muhsana. Quran describes her as a muhsana, which means she was inside a fort. She was in the protection of another family, her father, her uncle, her brother, whoever. And she's living in that fort safe. And you are going to knock on the door and speak to the one in charge of that fort and then tell them, I'd like to bring her into my fort. I'd like to bring her under my protection. So you're taking responsibility, which is why the primary conversation, when you think you're ready to get married to somebody, and you're still scared to talk to her dad, or you're scared to talk to the family, so I don't want them to say, no, you talk to them. You talk to them for me. I can't do it. Then you're not a man. Then you can't be trusted. Because you should be trusted with the responsibility of carrying this. You have to go and approach the father. This conversation that happens in the Quran, it happens between this young man, Musa alayhi salam, and the father. And the father directly, because he understands his daughter's intention, he comes back and he says, I want you to marry one of my two daughters. These two, one of them I want you to marry. And Musa alayhi salam is smart, he understands which one, the one who came and got him. He gets it. You know, إِنِّي أُرِيدُ أَنْ أُنْكِحَ إِحْدَى ابْنَتَيَّ هَاتَيْنِ عَلَىٰ أَنْ تَأْجُرَنِي ثَمَانِيَ حِجَجٍ. Listen to this. He says to him, but if you want to marry her, the mahar, you know what mahar is, like the marriage gift? Well, the only way I'll let you marry her is if you work for me for 8 years. وَإِنْ أَتْمَمْتَ عَشْرًا فَمِنْ عِنْدِكَ. And if you want to do 10 years, it's up to you, but 8 years you got to do. 10 if you want. 8 to 10 years I got to work for you if I want to marry one of your daughters? What kind of deal is this? But you know what? These are two heads of household talking. One head of household and the other potential head of household. Why wouldn't he make that offer? The guy doesn't have a home to live in. He doesn't have a job. He's a fugitive. Where's he going to go? And it's a great solution for him because now he gets to live in the house. Now the father has a man in the house that can protect the family. He doesn't have to send one or two of his daughters out to do work. Now there's somebody to take care of it. It takes care of his family needs. And Musa alayhi salam now has a place to stay and he can start a family and he can be at peace too. It works out for everybody. So the father makes a logical, rational suggestion. And Musa alayhi salam sees the sense in the deal and says, هَذَا مَا بَيْنِي وَبَيْنَكَ. This is good. Between you and me, it's done. He doesn't say this is between me and her. He says this is between you and me. Two men are talking. Two heads of household are talking. What's happened in the marriage process in our community? You know, either the guy and the girl are talking and the family doesn't know. Or the families are talking and the guy and girl don't know. They don't know what's going on. They're making all kinds of agreements and nobody knows except that they are, and in so many cultures, the day of the wedding, then the imam is there and they're signing the nikah and the mahar line is empty. And they're like, yeah, we decided the mahar is going to be $200,000. And the guy's like, what? What? I didn't sign up for this. He goes, no, it's just a number. It's okay. You don't have to give it. Are you serious? This is what makes a marriage valid. This is not just a number. This is not just an arbitrary thing. And in so many cases that I know of, I wish I didn't know this. In so many cases that I know of, the girl doesn't even know what her mahar is. She doesn't even know. And then later on she's told, oh, by the way, the chicken you ate at the walima, that was your mahar. What? Or the girl, you know, the jewelry we gave you, but we gave it to you for taking pictures, but now you have to give it to, give it back. But that was your mahar, temporary mahar, We're playing with Allah's law. And you know who's responsible for that? It's not your mother-in-law or the father-in-law or it's the cousins or the uncles or the family. You're a man. You're responsible. You took her to your home. You made her your wife. You were supposed to carry the mahar. You were supposed to stand up for it. You were supposed to make things clear well in advance. You're not a child. You're a man. And that's why you have to be trustworthy to take that responsibility. You can't blame anybody else. If somebody says my in-laws mistreat me, my mother-in-law mistreats me, my father-in-law mistreats me, my whoever mistreats me, no, they don't. Your husband mistreats you because he was supposed to be your shield. He's supposed to protect you. He's supposed to provide for you. He's supposed to take care of business. That's what you're supposed to do. If you're not ready to do that, and you still want to take care of your family, and just kind of have somebody that makes you feel good sometimes, then you're not ready for marriage. Then you're not qawi, and you're not amin. Don't do it. Don't do it. But if you're ready to be a man, then be a man. Then you have to step up. You have to draw clear lines. These are the rights of my parents. These are the rights of my siblings. These are the rights of my wife. These are the rights of my children. I will not give someone else their rights and take away somebody else's rights. I will not do that. I will fulfill my financial responsibility. I'll fulfill my religious responsibility. I'll fulfill my social responsibility. I'll dignify this person. I'll honor them. I'll take care of them. I'll teach them their religion. I'll live a better life with them. I'll be open with them. I'll be honest with them. I'll be qawi and I'll be amin. That's when you become a candidate for marriage. When you have that kind of rock-solid mindset, then Allah will bless your marriage and you will have the best life and you will be a good role model for your children also. May Allah Azza wa Jal allow our men to be the best candidates for marriage, and may Allah Azza wa Jal allow our daughters to find real men to marry. I have 4 daughters myself. I worry about them. May Allah Azza wa Jal give all of our children the ability to be the right kind of believing men and believing women that are good for each other and can stand up for each other's rights. بارك الله لي ولكم في القرآن الحكيم ونفعني وإياكم بالآيات والذكر الحكيم. الحمد لله وكفى والصلاة والسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى، خصوصا على أفضلهم خاتم النبيين محمد الأمين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. قال الله عز وجل في كتابه الكريم بعد أن أقول أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم: إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. عباد الله رحمكم الله، اتقوا الله. إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر ولذكر الله أكبر والله يعلم ما تصنعون. أقم الصلاة إن الصلاة كانت على المؤمنين كتابا موقوتا.
الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة، حي على الفلاح، قد قامت الصلاة، قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر، الله أكبر، لا إله إلا الله.
قيموا. الله الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. يا أيها الذين آمنوا إن من أزواجكم وأولادكم عدوا لكم فاحذروهم وإن تعفوا وتصفحوا وتغفروا فإن الله غفور رحيم. إنما أموالكم وأولادكم فتنة والله عنده أجر عظيم. فاتقوا الله ما استطعتم واسمعوا وأطيعوا وأنفقوا خيرا لأنفسكم ومن يوق شح نفسه فأولئك هم المفلحون. إن تقرضوا الله قرضا حسنا يضاعفه لكم ويغفر لكم والله شكور حليم. عالم الغيب والشهادة العزيز الحكيم. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله 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 أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بطش ربك لشديد إنه هو يبدئ ويعيد وهو الغفور الودود ذو العرش المجيد فعال لما يريد هل أتاك حديث الجنود فرعون وثمود بل الذين كفروا في تكذيب والله من ورائهم محيط بل هو قرآن مجيد في لوح محفوظ الله أكبر سمع الله لمن حمده الله 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 السلام عليكم ورحمة الله السلام عليكم ورحمة الله Please repeat after me. Astaghfirullah. 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 Astaghfirullah الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم وأتوب إليه اللهم أنت السلام ومنك السلام تباركت وتعاليت يا ذا الجلال والإكرام ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا يا مولانا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم وصلى الله تعالى على خير خلقه محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. Recite this with me, you know the surah. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل أعوذ برب الفلق من شر ما خلق ومن شر غاسق إذا وقب ومن شر النفاثات في العقد ومن شر حاسد إذا حسد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل أعوذ برب الناس ملك الناس إله الناس من شر الوسواس الخناس الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس من الجنة والناس. الله لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم لا تأخذه سنة ولا نوم له ما في السماوات وما في الأرض من ذا الذي يشفع عنده إلا بإذنه يعلم ما بين أيديهم وما خلفهم ولا يحيطون بشيء من علمه إلا بما شاء وسع كرسيه السماوات والأرض ولا يؤوده حفظهما وهو العلي العظيم. When you pray at home, practice this with your kids. I know they have a week off from school, so you'll get lots of chance to pray together. Please encourage families to pray together. The kids here have a play coming Saturday, and they're selling tickets outside. And I expect everybody here to get one. And bring your kids too, inshallah, because that's a really good encouragement for our children. So please see those ticket booth they've set up outside and get your tickets for it, inshallah. For the break? You want to do something crazy?
Dab it up.
What is that?
Dab it up.
That?
Dab it up.
Oh yeah, the backpack, the backpack.
No,
I'm not doing the back, no.
no.
We're not doing that, no.
Can we just do this then?
What?
Hey, you trying to, can I do my job?
And then two?
I texted if
Hold on, let me turn the internet off, hold on.